Hi there, I'm Adam Kibbers and this is my novel. Listen. Lucy and Glen Chase were heading in to the office of the FBI director. Lucy Knight didn't feel well. She didn't feel comfortable going in there. All eyes on her. She knows that the moment she sets foot in the FBI headquarters, that she will get the main attention she does not want. She would rather solve this issue, these things from far away. But yet this job and all that comes with it, this is her life. She sees that Glen struts along very proudly. He has nothing to fear. He is not mortified. He is not crumbled. And he is not ailing from something inside him. No, he is pretty much confident. The police officer, probably his family and all around him are very proud of him. He brings order and safety to the community. Everyone knows him and everyone probably appreciates him for it, thanks him for it. And he looks one of those men who do not get tired of telling people over and over again how much they sacrifice and contribute for the job. How much consuming the job really is, in order to appear more enlightened, in order to put themselves on a pedestal so that everyone can see them. But this is nothing Lucy can do. She cannot just put herself into a room full of strangers and try to get the admiration, even though Lucy wants that, even though Lucy would like to make everyone proud around herself, her family, that they can tap on her shoulders. How much she wanted that her parents, who are very proud, that they are very proud of her. But the day she told her parents that she wants to become a police officer, they looked at her. They looked at her questioningly. They looked at her as parents who think that they did something wrong, that it was on them, that the child was naughty, or that the child is not what she supposed to be. The child does not function. It does not function well according to what their parents hope for. Lucy's parents were through and through socialists. They thought that the entire system, the legal system, the law enforcement is corrupt. This law enforcement would rather help the capitalist and wealthy elite to keep themselves in power. Lucy's parents therefore had nothing but contempt for the police and the law enforcement. They said that they are the long arm of the capitalist society. So when their daughter decided to become a police officer, an FBI agent, they were speechless. They were disappointed. But yet, in their always misplaced openness, Lucy, very early on, immediately understood that their parents, they tried to be open-minded. They always had to force themselves to be open-minded, like they were playing a role. Like leftism would be all about open-mindedness, and her parents always had to remember that they are from the left and that they would have to act accordingly. So whenever Lucy did something wrong or whenever something came up, Lucy immediately noticed that her parents held in for some seconds, for some moments, to think about a proper response, to think about a proper behavior, like someone who asks himself, what would an open-minded person do? Therefore, Lucy very early on noticed that nothing in the life of her parents is their true selves. They rather assumed the roles and the lives of someone else. They fancied themselves to be socialists. And Lucy even remembers many occasions where her mother would yell at other people, would chide other people, just to make clear and understandable that she's not one of them, that she's a socialist, that she's not one of these ordinary folks. And they had nothing but contempt for those ordinary folks. No, Lucy's parents, they always wanted to be special. They always wanted to be extraordinary. Even how to raise a child, they thought they would make everything different. They thought they would do it better, according to Lucy's parents out there in the world. The ordinary folks, the so-called capitalists and their enablers, they could not manage to raise children. No, their education and their education system would be rather oppressive. It would demean the child, and therefore they wanted to do something better. They wanted to raise their daughter in a new way, but for a matter of fact, they did not know how these new ways. They just assumed it is strictly opposite of what they saw in their own childhood, what they knew about the school system. And Lucy knew that it is not much what they knew about. It was filled with prejudices and assumptions. So Lucy grew up in an atmosphere of insecurity, of dilettancy. Her parents, they always had to configure and reconfigure their behavior. Nothing was natural. Everything was always stilted, distant, and would be lacking any emotional depth. Lucy's parents, in the end, did nothing but were searching for themselves. They hadn't even figured out who they are. They hadn't even figured out what they do and want to do with their lives. Lucy, in the beginning, in her youth, she just made her peace with it. This is what parents are, she said to herself. So what of it? These are my parents, and that's it. But when she grew older, she more and more distanced herself from her parents. She more and more understood that her parents, they are still premature. They are not developed mentally. And this left a void. And this void she tried to fill with her work, with her life. But she did not pretty much succeed. There was this fear. She was scared and she was struggling with it. This fear that was crippling her, and how she had to deal with it. She would rather let herself called a whore than really a coward. And now she was on the way in the FBI headquarters, the center of her world. Without this job, she had nothing. She walks in and tells the bureau host how proud she once felt here, how proud she was once when she walked in here, strutted through this hall. She had made it. She was one of those few who were extraordinary. This is what she was told. Not everyone gets in to the FBI. The applications for the FBI, they are piling up. The FBI, they can choose whom they want to get into. They can choose with whom they want to work with. It's not like the local police were mostly bromances and people who know each other become policemen, so that the police force, the local police force, is rather a friend and family business. No, the FBI, they are professionals, and this is what Lucy was craving for. She grew up in a home where nothing was right, where her parents were playing a stupid childish game. She wanted to work with professionals. She wanted to work with adults. And she thought of herself that she would do well there, that she would finally meet sane and mature people. And how would she have liked to be one of them? How she would have loved just to be welcomed there. Even though Lucy tells herself that she does not need any approval, that she can manage her life all by herself. She's an adult. And so what of it? She's an adult who has many sexual intercourses with many men. So what of it? Sometimes Lucy tries to encourage herself, tries to embolden herself. What of it? Men do the same, don't they? If a man would do that, no one would complain about it. So why it is wrong? Why is it wrong that women do it? Even though Lucy tries to convince herself it is all about sexuality and it is all about a craving, but her conscience and the voice of her conscience reminds her, no, it is out of fear. It is because you cannot sleep alone during the night, because you are scared of the dark. This is why you have to be with everyone. This is why you fear to be alone. This is why you can't even be alone in a room, because you fear that something might happen, that something would come after you. Lucy walks straight to the FBI director's home office. Harry Maim. Harry Maim was always impressed Lucy Knight. Harry Maim, he's one of these leaders, one of these alpha figures. He's quiet, he's thoughtful, he's not yelling. He walks slowly but steadily through the office halls of the FBI. Someone who does not make any erratic behavior. Everything seems so calm with him, as if he would be calmly in control of everything, as if he would easily be able to have an overview of everything his men do. And he stares at someone deeply, as if he would be able to look inside the brains of everyone, as if he would be able to look through people. Harry Maim and like a father figure. At least Lucy thought of him. And in that way, the first time she met Harry Maim, she some sort of perceived his greatness. She some sort of perceived that there's a reason why Harry Maim is the head of the FBI. Even though he only says a few words, but those few words, they are not fancy. They are not like that he would be, in a way, wanting to build up a nice conversation. Or Harry Maim is not the small talk guy. No, he is straightforward. One word, a few words. But these few words, they hit the center. Those few words, they hit the nail on the head. Harry Maim, he is not the man who just meanders. No. And Harry Maim, he has an eye for real talents. He immediately saw Lucy, and he was fond of her. He saw that this is a very gifted woman. And Lucy thrilled herself when she came out of the FBI Academy, that Harry Maim, he is probably someone who takes interest in her, who is willing to donate his fatherly attention to her. This is what Lucy Knight always craved. Her parents, they were like children, and their appreciation in the end meant nothing for Lucy, because Lucy saw their true faces, saw who they are. So what of it? What would it have changed if her parents would have been more appreciative, even though she thought of it as disappointing that her parents, who were always so open-minded, who were always so willing to pretend that they are different than all the others. Lucy would have preferred that her parents, even if they would have role-played it like they always do, even if they would have acted on it, she would have been glad if they would have been more appreciative, if they would have been more supportive, and not what she received, that before they responded, that they had to think about it, that they had to think about the proper answer. What would extraordinary people do? What would open-minded people say? Of course, and then they concluded they would be against it. Her parents, they never saw the child in Lucy. They never saw that this young girl, this young woman was actually their daughter. And Lucy has strong principles. Yes, she does indeed. But she as well as knows that with children things are different. You treat your children differently. You measure them with different measures. You bestow on them love. You bestow on them appreciation. And you affiliate and associate yourself with your children and not look at them from a distance like they would be ordinary people, like they would be just some strangers you have to educate, you have to wash their brain because she did something wrong. So this was disappointed. And what a relief it was now and after that to meet Harry Maim, this man. And Lucy imagined many times how it would have been to be the daughter of Harry Maim, to grow up in his home, to grow up with such a father who always seems to say few words but the right thing. But then a shadow casted over Lucy's thought. She did never see Harry Maim after the story came out, after everyone knew that Lucy Knight apparently has a lot of sexual partners, that Lucy Knight, this promising young woman, is probably nothing else but a whore, that she is so stupid that apparently she cannot keep her private life secret, or that she is apparently not willing to act more discreetly, more appropriately. What if the entire community knows that an FBI agent fucks around, that an FBI agent has sex with a lot of men? And she almost stumbles on that thought. Lucy would rather turn around and leave, because she knows that now is the first time after the story broke that she has to face Harry Maim, that she has to stand in his office, give him account. Will there be some nasty words being exchanged? Will there be some stupid implications? Some what many men say that. Some stupid references she heard from Glen about dicks and so on. Once they went into a diner and Lucy just ate a sausage, and Glen could nothing but smugly smile, stupidly smile. And Lucy prayed that Glen wouldn't say anything inappropriate in this diner, that he wouldn't talk about dicks, and that Lucy apparently even likes to eat sausages in her spare time. Now she was afraid of it. She is afraid that Harry Maim, the man she admired and still admires, that he would some sort of reveal his true nature, that this man who has a smart and penetrating mind would undermine and disgrace himself in front of Lucy, that he would be nothing more than all these stupid men, all these men who are grappling with their sexuality, who apparently feel a need to make stupid remarks and comments about a woman and her private life, who even think they are entitled to make remarks and say something. So what is it your concern? Was always Lucy's fault. She has to deal with her mental issues. Others use alcohol, others take drugs, but Lucy, she has this notion, she has this strive for not to be alone. At least she thinks that way. Now she's scared. Now she's scared to meet the eyes of Harry Maim. She walks through a hall. Many young FBI agents walk past her. Do they know? Do they know who she is? She's probably very famous. At least Lucy assumes that men talk much. And even here in the FBI, even though everyone assumes that they're extraordinary, in the end, they are nothing but stupid schoolboys. Lucy always wondered, despite the fact that America is so civilized, despite the fact that America is so advanced in technology and even in some social areas like female emancipation, yet this emancipation and this advancement seem to have been passed by some people. And mostly men who did not grow up, mostly men who still have a world view of their grandparents. Men who still feel threatened by women who have sexual intercourse with other men. Men who still call women with more partners than one whores and so on. And men who still seem to be so bothered by it that they can do nothing but sneer and grumble and make stupid remarks. And Lucy is trapped in this world. She cannot go outside. She cannot remove herself from it. She depends on it. Her life and her purpose in life depends on it. Lucy and Glen walk straight in to the office of FBI Director Harry Maim. Harry Maim had told Glen he wants a first-hand report from him and Lucy, because this issue apparently has stirred up a lot of trouble. But this was again unusual. Harry Maim was actually the man who would come to you. He would be the man who would pop in and pass by, who would always be around. You would not expect him, but then he would appear, not in a disturbing way. No, he would always appear in a very friendly way, in an amicable way, as if someone who would just pass by, a good friend, an old chap, and would just ask you how you are doing, whether you are fine. Harry Maim, he never really talked with people in that way, as if he would demand something from you, like many bosses do. Some bosses, they walk through the halls of their offices, or they walk through the halls of their workshops and their companies, and they talk with every one of their employees in such a way as if they would be interrogating them, as if they would immediately question them. They want answers, quick answers, and they would be like judges who would issue a verdict about the value of an employee. And these employers, mostly they appear as cold, as if they would only be interested in the money and a worker and an employee generates for the company. But Harry Maim, he was different. It was always the notion of Lucy that Harry Maim, he knew what was going on in his office, and he just popped by to see if everything was all right, if one is doing fine, and that Harry Maim, that he would rather care for the personality of someone, of the human behind, and that Harry Maim, that he would not be like all the other FBI directors who were nothing but politicians who only care about elections, who only care about their reputations and what a case could do for them, how it could enhance their political careers. Now Harry Maim, he was not a politician, and this made him human, this made him amicable, and this made him respectable. Lucy knew that. Then they arrive at the office of Harry Maim. Lucy gulps in the air as if she would be preparing herself for deep dive. She bends her head. She is ashamed of herself. She is ashamed of herself like she would be a stupid girl. This girl who wronged her father. This girl who is now repentant, who feels ashamed of herself, who has brought this grace of herself. Lucy's parents, they never cared about her sex life. They even encouraged her. They said that it is normal that a woman sleeps around, that she enjoys herself, that it would be human life to shop around. But Lucy very early on felt this fear, this mortal fear, and that her reaction on this fear, that it was wrong, that it was not something you ought to do, that sleeping with a lot of men doesn't give you any pleasure at all. No, it leaves you stranded, devastated, empty and void. And she could not help it. She could not overcome this fear inside her, this fear of being alone, this fear of being or having to manage one's life all by himself. Glen enters after Lucy and he closes the door behind him. Now Lucy feels like she would be trapped, like she cannot go anywhere. Now she has to face Harry Maim. But then she reminds herself that she is a professional and that she at least has to pretend that she is a professional and that she has to do the right thing. No matter what it is, she has to maintain appearance. So she tries to straighten up. She imagines that she is wearing a suit, that she is carrying an FBI badge with her, that she is one of those few selected special ones. She's extraordinary. She was being admitted to the FBI because she has a pregnant mind, because she has a very extraordinary mind, because she can see connections and interconnections, because she is able to think beyond the extraordinary. Harry Maim's eyes rest on her. He says, "Good morning," but you cannot detect anything from his voice, like he would say it every day. And that's the worst thing for Lucy. You can't quite grasp. Is he polite? Is he just preparing for a lunch? Is he willing or wanting to hurt Lucy? Does he feel offended by Lucy? What is this all about? So, what do we have? Asks Harry Maim. Glen starts. Well, there are 2 murders. We don't know who and why they were killed. We don't even know whether they are connected or not. This looks like separate murders. There's some people, probably some jerks, who like to kill people. That's all there is. So we are still taping in the dark. Sometimes Lucy asks herself, how did Glen Chase ever pass the exam into the FBI? Glen Chase and many others, they do not seem like the ones who would be very suitable for the FBI. Maybe for the local police, yes. But whenever she hears Glen analyzing a case or talking about a case, she always thinks to herself, he's actually not someone who really deserves to be in the FBI. He doesn't have the wits. And she is a little bit offended of it. She's offended of it because she always thinks about the FBI as an exclusive club where only a few are admitted. And now Harry, and now Glen Chase, this man who apparently cannot even see any connection into this murder and what it means. Do we have a profile? Asks Harry Maim, and his eyes are almost piercing through Lucy. No, we don't have yet. Response Glen. From what I gather, these murders have a very sadistic notion, and that the killer probably likes to prepare for these murders in advance. He's probably a pedantic, some freak who likes to carve up people and wants attention. So if these two murders are connected, then it is all about attention. We have probably another serial killer. And if these murders are not connected, then we have two murderers who just want everyone to know anything about them. Probably it is only a matter of time until we get anything from the killer, where he will brag about his murder and so on. Did he take any trophies? Asks Harry Maim. Not that we know of. Glen Chase goes through his notes. Harry Maim is thoughtful. Then his eyes fall again on Lucy. Agent Knight, he says in a very monotone voice. Nothing reveals his mental state. Agent Knight, what is your gathering of this case? And now Glen looks at Lucy with contempt and with a warning. He set the pace. He already said what is necessary. And now if Lucy comes around and says something else, this could really embarrass him. So he wants to make sure that she understands it, or at least wants to convey that in this case there is no deviation. Even though he hates Lucy, even though Glen despises her, and he secretly and sort of artificiously imagines her having sex with a lot of men, and whenever he sees her, he imagines that this mouth had the dick of someone else in it, and he subconsciously wishes that she would give him a blowjob. However, he has nothing but contempt for Lucy Knight. But in this very moment, when he stands for the FBI director, and again for Glen as well, Harry Maim is like a father figure, like someone he looks up to and whose appreciation he craves. He does not want to be put into the shadows, and not by a woman, and not by this whore. Lucy Knight is thoughtful. She knows what this means, and she knows when she diverts from the explanation of Glen that Glen will make her suffer. But yet she wants the approval of Harry Maim. And as well as she thinks, and she rightfully thinks, that her job is probably on the stake, that she has to prove herself, and to everyone out there, everyone who think of her as a whore, as a stupid cunt who probably had sexual intercourse with a lot of members of the FBI, and that's probably the main and only reason why she got the place in the FBI in the first place. Now she has to prove her worth. She has to prove why she has an extraordinary mind. Lucy Knight is some sort of kicked off by a narcissism, by a love for herself. And she cannot bear the thought that everyone thinks of her as a stupid whore, that everyone thinks of her like a woman who spreads her legs just to get ahead in her life. No, she has to prove herself. That's why, even though she knows the consequences, what it will lead to, and that Glen, especially after this in the first couple of days, will probably do not leave any opportunity to demean her, undermine her, even in the front of all others. Now she has to be very careful. That's why it would be smart not to burn Glen Chase, but Lucy, she cannot bear the thought, and she wants to prove herself as well in front of Harry Maim. So she starts. I think that the two murders are connected, and that the killer so far has not proven that he is in a way pedantic, or that he is sadistic and so on. What it looks like, and Lucy May immediately notices that Harry Maim gives her his whole attention. He is observing and surveilling her very carefully. And she feels again this energy, this strength passing through her. She wants to impress her father. It is more likely that the killer does not seek sexual gratification, that these murders, that they are not all about sex, that there is a strong evidence for it. Firstly, he did not clean the first victim, Karen Leaves, because sexuality, even for psychopaths, it is always something which has to do with cleanness, which has to do with sereneness. Even if they make a bloody mess, they always have some sort of, through blood as a rebirth and blood as a means to cleanse someone. Through rebirth, a child who is born needs or sheds a lot of blood, the blood of his mother. So blood and all these things, as well as cleansing, always indicate that sexuality is something pure, or that the killer wants to reach this pure sexuality, this pure connection which goes beyond the ordinary. And that he, the killer, thinks of himself as aptly deserving this pure connection, because he thinks of himself as a god who would copulate and be together with a special divine being, so that sexuality therefore becomes, in many serial killers' cases, the driving force, especially when he wants to change the appearance or relive some sexual fantasy over and over again. So far in these two victims, we have no indication that the killer would relive any sexual fantasies, or that the killer would gather any sexual gratification from these killings. These killings, they are not about sex. What is it then? Asks FBI Director Harry Maim. This question appeared very severe for Lucy Knight, as if Harry Maim starts to doubt Lucy's judgment. Lucy almost would have thought, almost loses heart, these severe words, but yet she still can gather enough will and energy and courage to continue. As far as I am concerned, she again emphasizes herself. She wants to soothe Glen. She fears his reaction and she fears his wrath. So she wants to be only the one. So if they want to mock her, well, he should mock her, whatever it is. Lucy continues. These murders, they are about revenge, about setting things right. In the first murder, Karen leaves the murder. He did not clean him. The murder just dressed her. The murder brought in dumplings. These dumplings, they were not made in the home of the victim. They were brought there so that the murder relives and past appearance. But this past appearance is not about sexuality. It is a special connection he had, or a special memory he lived through, where he was burned, which was a major setback for him. He wanted to clear things. Years later, he wanted to set the record straight. He wanted to tell probably his mother how he feels, or he hoped for showing his mother what really happened, or how wrong she did. And the second murder, Joseph Parham, this was not about just killing someone or just satisfying one's sexual drive. No, this is about making visible for everyone who Joseph Parham is, what he really looks like, or the person that hides behind him. Harry Maim is thoughtful. So who is Joseph Parham? We don't know. So what is his motive then? Well, it could be, continues Lucy Knight, that the killer thinks of himself as a justice warrior, as someone who brings to light some wrong. But we don't know these wrongs yet. Interposes Glen, and Lucy perceives a sneer in his voice. No, we don't know. We don't know why the killer is selecting all these people. We don't know why he's killing them. So we know nothing about the killer then. Well, because he may think of himself as a justice warrior, continues Lucy, it might be that he lives an ordinary life. This could be a family father. This could be someone who is not visible. Well, there are many serial killers who lived ordinary, normal lives. Interjects Glen close, and in his eyes are nothing but contempt. This is true. But what we have here is a trauma. This is the reason, it is most likely that the killer lived a successful, normal life years on, but then at once he snapped. He snapped. How snapped? Asks Glen. No, you are born with it. These people, they are insane. They are out of the ordinary. They are born with it. No, I don't think that he was born with it. I don't think that he has this drive, what ordinary killers have to kill them. No, this is all about revenge. This is not about just satisfying his drive. It is more than likely that the killer went through a child trauma, that he experienced something hideous, and through the years he could suppress it. His ordinary life could help him to suppress the trauma he lived in his childhood. But then, the older he grew, more and more it was difficult to suppress this trauma. And then he snapped. And the way all these murders have been committed, the way these two murders have been committed, indicate that he's ailed by this trauma, that he cannot overcome it. And because of it, he has to go over it over and over again, so that it doesn't leave his mind at ease. And that's why it always seems as if he would be meticulous, or that he would be work and process it vigorously, but he most certainly satisfies the thoughts and images in his brain. After Lucy has stopped talking, silent ensues. Glen watches her. He looks at her in contempt. She again strayed from the path. Lucy can feel not how many curses he probably throws at her in his mind. But then he looks at Harry Maim. He wants his verdict. He wants that the father says the word, says his opinion, reveals it. Harry Maim is thoughtful for a while, and then he just nods. Nothing more. I want you to keep me updated. He then again stares at Lucy. Lucy and Glen know that the conversation is over, that now they have to leave the office of the father. And every time Lucy is disappointed, because she would hope that Harry Maim would say something positive to her, something encouraging, or even if it would be good job, detective. But in all these years, Harry Maim, he did not say anything like that even, and this was such a big contrast to his behavior, because Harry Maim, he would give someone always the feeling that the detective, that the person is important, and that he is not a politician, but someone who is a police officer with all his heart, but yet he still is not able to say any positive or encouraging words to his detective, or he just not says them to Lucy thinks, maybe he treats her differently. And when she is in company with others, he may keep himself back. Maybe he hangs out with all these others. Who knows then? Lucy is thoughtful and as well as disappointed. She did not get any gratification, and now she has to deal with the wrath of Glen.